Good evening and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hisham Tilawi. Ms. McKinney, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me to be with you this evening.
Thank you. It's an honor to have you in the program. Ms. McKinney, let's just start a little bit with when you were a congresswoman, and I really wanted, I've talked to a couple of congressmen on the program, and I just wanted to briefly, how does AIPAC work? How do they come to you and say, you have to do this, you have to do that? How does it work?
Well, to put it briefly, the best way any special interest lobby can ensure that they always win the vote is to make sure that they determine who actually gets a chance to vote. And so AIPAC plays at the candidate level. When someone decides that they're going to run for Congress, then that's when AIPAC or all of the various organizations that represent, it's not just AIPAC, it's a network of organizations that have individuals that represent or that look out for the pro-Israeli interest, or it may be an entire organization that does so. And in so doing, they operate so as to make sure that any candidate who wins is going to have the desired position when a vote comes up. So, for example, in the middle of Operation Cast Lead, despite millions of people taking to the streets all over the world, 530 out of 535 members of Congress voted yes for a resolution to support Israel, and we had only 5 House members who voted no. The entire story, of course, people I'm sure are familiar with Paul Finley, but and Paul Finley has written a book, but you have Gus Savage, who actually put his experience with the pro-Israel lobby on the congressional record. And people can go and read on the congressional record exactly what happened to Gus Savage. If you go to www.thomas.loc.gov, that's the Library of Congress, and then you just put into the search engine Gus Savage, the name of the speech that he gave on the floor of the House is called Laying Out the Facts. And if you go there and just type in Laying Out the Facts, then his series of speeches will come up, and he explains in depth what happened to him and how they were able to overpower him, a sitting incumbent, with so much money. They were not successful the first time they targeted him, but they got him the second time.
Now, Cynthia, didn't that happen to you too?
Yes, twice. And the first time was in 2002. I had been in Congress for 10 years and found myself on the short end of the money, on the short end of press, positive press. I got a whole lot of negative press, and my Muslim surnamed contributors all found themselves getting telephone calls from members of the press asking them why they had given money to my campaign. Every trick in the book that could have been used was used. And then again in 2006, when I came back and won after the 2004 election in 2006, I was the only Democrat to lose. And the significance of that is that when the vote to continue funding for the war came up, my replacement, who had been meticulously selected by Rahm Emanuel and company, voted to fund the war. Well, guess what? The war funding bill passed exactly by 218 votes. That's the exact number of votes required to pass a piece of legislation in the House. Had I been there to vote no, the bill would have failed and we would have a different conversation today. So those elements of the war party, who are also members of the Democratic Party, were counting their votes. They knew that the vote was going to be a tight vote, and they had figured out how to get rid of me, and so they did. And they ended up passing the legislation to fund the war one more time.
Okay. So how many terms total did you serve?
I served 6 terms in Congress.
6 terms in Congress. Now, let's get into really what I wanted to talk to you about, twofold. I want you to talk about Gaza and about your trip. And actually, I understand that you are going back there in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Okay. And the second thing that I want to talk to you about, let's talk about Obama's speech first. What do you think? Number one, I want you to answer this question. How could Obama deliver that speech in Cairo unless there was clearance with AIPAC, GINSA, and the likes? Wouldn't you think?
Well, you've got Rahm Emanuel as chief of staff, and so the way things work, nothing happens without the chief of staff's knowledge.
Do you think his speech was cleared by AIPAC, GINSA, JDL, the ADL, and everybody else?
Look, the only thing I'm going to say is let me see what the policy is. And, Pakistanis are dying from drones. U.S. troops are being sent to Afghanistan. U.S. troops and the contractors continue to occupy Iraq. Israel hasn't missed a dollar from U.S. Treasury. So now, you want to tell me what's changed?
Okay, so you're saying talk is cheap, and you might not see policy to go along with that speech.
What I'm suggesting is that I am very anxious to see policy change. Whether or not we'll get it is a totally different matter.
Okay. Have you visited the West Bank?
No, I've never been to the area.
You were never invited when you were a congressman?
Oh, I was always invited to take the AIPAC trip, but I never did.
And you never were invited by the Palestinians to go there?
Well, that's interesting. Actually, no.
Okay. Well, you have an open invitation to come to Palestine. Anytime you would like to go there, I'm ready. I'll tell you what, on live TV, we're going to start something to go to the West Bank.
Anything new, Rahm Emanuel bragged after the Democratic Convention for having silenced President Carter. Now, can you imagine we've got a former United States president who happens to be a Democrat, and he's not allowed to speak at the Democratic Convention? Why? Because he basically champions the human rights of the Palestinians. And so I would very much love to go and see not only an end to settlements, an end to the wall, the tearing down. We could have a Reagan moment, a Ronald Reagan moment, and say, Mr. Netanyahu, tear down that wall. President Obama could have done that, and he didn't do that either.
Well, you know what? If we have President Cynthia McKinney, she could have done that.
absolutely would have done it.
Great.
I absolutely would have done it.
Well, let's hope you will have the opportunity one day to do just that, and I will take you up on that trip. We will organize a trip to the West Bank, especially to see those settlements. Now,
that would be wonderful. I look forward to that.
Great.